Okay, it's noon, and I will run through the announcements. Good morning or good afternoon, Economic Club of Traverse City. I'm your president, Christopher Rogers. This is our September 25th monthly meeting. As a heads up, the annual dinner was initially scheduled for this evening and was canceled due to the coronavirus restrictions. And so this was a lunch adaptation that we're adopting for this month. So just a heads up in case anybody hadn't heard or you have friends or guests that were wondering, no event this evening. October and November, again, the club will continue to monitor what we can and can't do with regard to the meeting. I'd anticipate that they will be Zoom webinars such as this, unless you hear otherwise, and then we will communicate that clearly. Same for 2021. The board is evaluating and continuing to look at what we can do for 2021, and I'm hoping we can all reconvene at the country club in January. As a reminder, past recordings of the prior month's webinars are saved to our YouTube page, and you can also get to them via the club's website at tceconclub.com by visiting the events page and scrolling down. So I'm just going to give you a brief heads up. We're looking at the home page there. If I go to the events page and go down a bit, you'll see the recordings are underneath each respective speaker, and you can play them directly from that location, or you can go to the youtube.com page. So if I stop sharing my screen, you're going to see me white and clear. Final reminder, there's a chat and Q&A feature for the presentation, and you can use that to submit questions throughout Fernando's presentation. So I'm going to get into introducing our speaker today and go from there. So I'm pleased to welcome today's speaker, Fernando Meza, CEO of OneUp Web. I'm going to give a bit of his bio, and then I'll turn over the platform here. He has worked in media and marketing since 2000 and is an Emma Bowen Foundation alumnus. During his EBF fellowship, Fernando worked for the Marketing Services Department for ABC Entertainment while completing his degree in strategic marketing. After college, he spent 6 years in Los Angeles working as for a creative agency in a variety of roles, ranging from producer-director to post-production to music supervisor, launching various series for television such as Lost, Desperate Housewives, and Extreme Makeover Home Edition, as well as co-branded campaigns between the Disney Cable Networks group properties and Honda. In 2009, Fernando moved to New York City, freelancing for cable network groups and creative agencies based in New York City and Los Angeles before pursuing a career in advertising. After 5 years of working with the amazing network of professionals on high-profile brands, Fernando accepted a position at OneUp Web, a digital marketing agency here in Traverse City, I'm sure you're all familiar with. He then acquired OneUp Web and took over as CEO in 2014, 5 short years after having moved here. One of the themes to his success is a favorite saying of my son's: teamwork makes the dream work.
It's true, man.
It pays to have a good team. Fernando serves his community as a board member of the Traverse City Chamber of Commerce and Northwest Michigan Health Services. So that's the background, Fernando, that you know so well. Welcome, and thank you for your time today. I'll let you have the floor here. So.
I appreciate the introduction, Chris. For a second there, I was wondering for myself, like, who is that person? Because that feels, especially after having 2 young kids, I have no idea who I was 15 years ago, let alone yesterday. So I certainly appreciate the introduction. I also appreciate the audience. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. And I wanted to treat, as someone that's seen some of these conversations, I wanted treat this as an open dialogue and discussion. This year, and I know it's a tired saying, and you're going to hear this over and over again for a while. Everything blew up because of COVID, and I would love to kind of just give you a walkthrough of what we personally experience as an agency that does business across the country and in some cases internationally, and also what we saw from our perspective and the things that clients did well and the things that caught clients completely off guard regardless of industry. And there are certain themes that I think are very important that people always talk about the importance of people. People always talk about the ideas of having a flexible work culture as a virtue, but you never really understand where the ROI for something like that is until something like this happens. And so certainly want to be an open book. And if you have any questions, I'd like to make sure that we have enough room in this session so that I can address those questions and I can give you my, some context to what I perceive and just go from there. So as Chris mentioned, I'm originally from Los Angeles. And if you're wondering how I got here, no, it's not because I'm a member of the Witness Protection Program. I visited here sometime in April of 2012 and completely fell in love with the community and realized that after, working in advertising for so long, I just was looking for something different. I wanted to be a part of a different community, and I wanted to have this thing called work-life balance. And so that was the big appeal for me in coming to Traverse City. You could tell that it was a community that was on the verge of just going through a series of evolutions, and it certainly called on me. And I didn't really know anyone here. The people that I ended up knowing were the people that were my coworkers. So I moved here on a one-way ticket with 3 bags from Brooklyn, New York on October 7th of 2012. And October 8th, I started work. And it's been a wild ride since, both from being an employee for the founder of the company to today, to being, the CEO and the owner of the company. So when I acquired the agency, we were what I would consider a healthy prune size of 19, and now we're getting ready to hire our 47th employee with 48 and 49 in the queue right now. So it's been a busy time. It turns out that in these times, people have really recognized the value of digital marketing and having digital infrastructure in a state that allows you to be flexible to the market conditions that you are dealt with. It's been busy to say the least. The thing that I would say, just to start off this conversation, and let's go back in time to March 22nd, where I believe that was right around when the executive order came through to stay in place, at which point, we had already been working remotely for about a week. I was very grateful that we had completely migrated all of our servers and our infrastructure to being cloud-based and on-site co-managed. Things like not having to just, be tied to a desktop and making the commitment to get laptops for everyone years ago. I was grateful for, because if you try to buy a laptop in the end of March, good luck. So, little things like that. And I think the reason why I want to say this is that the culture that was here prior was not one that was very flexible, where you came in here, you did your job between this time, and that's it. But life is not, so black and white, and that seems to be a theme lately. And that I tell my coworkers, my colleagues, that you have to be very comfortable with playing in the gray so that you can get to that black and white answer that you're looking for. And sometimes you can't really get there, but creating an environment of flexibility was something that was very important to me. And again, it's for those of us that are employers here, for those of us that work in HR, it can be a pain in the ass to have an environment that's not so here are your boxes, this is how you're going to play. But I can tell you firsthand that I am so grateful that we put in that work and figured out a way to make it work. Because when we had to pivot our business to be completely remote, it was something that was so easy that my coworkers would send me notes and emails and letters and saying how grateful they were for the environment, because for them, everything was business as usual. And there's a lot of comfort in that, considering that we end up spending so much time together as people. So in that respect, right, like flexibility ended up being something that was very, very beneficial to us, because we were able to be there for our clients in a way that they weren't prepared for, right? We were their foundational grounding element that allowed them to feel like things were normal. And it really surprised me that at these organizations across the country, we're talking multinational construction firms that make billions of dollars, all the way through to technology companies that sell SaaS technologies in the Northeast to clients like Under Armour. The things that we were hearing from our clients were very shocking, in that they couldn't just, like, they had to go to the office to get files off of their computer. I thought that was the weirdest thing to hear, right? Like the fact that in 2020, you couldn't just log in somewhere and just switch on like you would normally do. So I can't even imagine the amount of cost went into, like, at least from an opportunity cost perspective, as far as not being productive because of that. And how you always assume that companies have their stuff together, but they really don't until the rubber meets the road, for lack of a better term. That again, so what I recognize is that technology was still something that people were trying to figure out. And that became very, very apparent with the types of business inquiries that we would get. We got a lot of inquiries for business that were related to technology, as far as website design and development. Things as easy as setting up, online payment and trying to create a different revenue stream that maybe involves a form of shipping, basically turning into an e-commerce business overnight. Maybe some of our clients had been thinking about that, but weren't fully ready to make that plunge. Well, they were certainly ready, and they were provided with a big motivating factor to do that because of COVID. And I'm sure you guys have all seen those interesting stats and memes on LinkedIn, as far as, like digital transformations that have happened, like we've done 80 years of digital transformation in 4 weeks. So, it's amazing to me, like, given the proper motivation, how you can basically do anything, and when survival is on the line. So a lot of conversations about upgrading infrastructure, a lot of conversations about just helping people figure logistically how they're going to turn into a different type of business. And the thing that I remember hearing, and I have colleagues that are, at very high levels at organizations and for instance, a friend of mine who's a partner at RSM, and he basically told me that one of his biggest assets that he saw, not only because he's on the private equity side of things, that he saw with his team, but also his clients and the pipeline that he was working, is the value of your colleagues and your teams to be creative, right? Like, it's almost this term bricolage, where you try to take these pieces that you currently have and rearrange them in different ways to develop value, to create value. And because you're not really going to be able to enter into anything that you're not already doing when there's a pandemic upon you, right? And so you're really having to get very creative and resourceful with the people that you have on site. And I thought that was very interesting, because that's exactly what we were going through. Maybe we were technologically a little bit better positioned, but at the same time, what we're trying to do is again, how do we, meet our clients and customers where they're at, based on the market forces upon them. So I think that the theme right now that you're probably picking up on is the importance of being, very people-centric, not only from a customer perspective, but also from a human resources perspective. Because, without the people that you have working on your teams, you really can't do anything. So the importance of creativity, the importance of flexibility, the importance of being able to communicate, and then, you know, as quickly as you can pivot to meet a new demand is solely focused on your colleagues. So that's certainly something that I wanted to highlight. And then, you know, just the sheer surprise that, you know, you think clients and companies have their stuff together until, you know, something like that happens. So hold on for just 1 second. I just want to make sure that I'm tracking along my outline. I think that the other thing that has become abundantly clear for our, at least as far as what we've seen with our customers and engagement metrics, we have access to a ton of information, not only through analytics platforms that we have on site, different technology solutions that we have, but also through our clients' accounts, right? We have access to their analytics platforms. Seemingly overnight, you know, you have people completely changing with the way that they behave online. Where, you know, mobile, you know, for the last 3 years, mobile has been the device of choice for people, you know, and that happened, you know, 2-3 years ago, where it went from being desktop, laptop, you know, was the primary device that people were interacting with you on digital to mobile. Well, that went right back overnight. You know, people were home, people had their laptops, and they were able to just engage with your ecosystem using, you know, their laptop devices. So, and then the other thing too is what we noticed is just the types of searches, the types of queries that people were doing, the way in which they were spending money completely shifted. Our e-commerce clients saw numbers that were reminiscent of they were about 10 to 50% off of what they would see around the holidays, around Black Friday, around Christmas in July, where, you know, people all of a sudden that maybe had income or had certain things, they were going to take a trip somewhere and they decided that they couldn't. And so there were these pockets of disposable income that all of a sudden people found. And you know, we saw, you know, our e-commerce clients saw some tremendous performances. So, and for those of you that work in that business, I'm sure you could probably attest to that, or especially if you're anywhere in the supply chain. So the consumer behavior shifts that we've recognized with our clients. The other thing that we're noticing too is this shift in consumption of media, where if you haven't noticed, production, and I feel bad for my colleagues out in Hollywood right now, especially like half my family works in Hollywood, you know, they are slowly getting back to producing content. So if stuff wasn't already in the can, it wasn't going to get produced, let alone go to a theater, right? And so what happened is that people are now shifting to platforms like, you know, Netflix, platforms like YouTube. YouTube engagement metrics saw tremendous growth. Like we saw something like the 600% increase in consumption, you know, seemingly overnight. So if you were a brand that was already, you know, active in these different channels, you certainly saw a positive effect to that, because all of a sudden you had a captivated audience that wasn't, you know, that wasn't busy with, you know, having to do things like be at the office. So I guess, and Chris, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I guess at this point, what I would say is if there's any questions that you guys would like me to ask, or did you want to wait until the end?
I'll pop back in here. You can keep going. I mean, I've noted down a few questions that I can throw at your direction. Just kind of all over the board. I don't see.
Hopefully they're not personal.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you mentioned it sounds like the company doubled in size. I don't know if that was from when you took over to present. You know, if you know whether that was the case or some other kind of
Yeah, that
boundaries
was
to
definitely the
that?
case. So for people that know of One Up Web, even before I showed up here, when I started at the company, I think I was employee 51, and the previous owner had taken the company in a different direction, and unfortunately that direction did not really work out, and there was some what I would consider collateral damage in that. Then when I acquired the agency, it was at 19. And basically there was steady growth year over year, but in the last 18 months, I would say that we've doubled in size. So,
Gotcha.
The 2015, 2016 to a company size of around 24, 25 to today, where we're getting close to hitting 50 by the year end.
Yeah. So lessons learned. I mean, what are your takeaways from, being in the mix for that? Sounds like quite a burst of growth in a certain instance. I mean, was it, how was hiring?
Oh, yeah.
Et cetera?
There was certainly, I think the term is called growing pains.
Yeah.
There were a couple of those. And I think that what I appreciate about us and my colleagues that are directors is that we very quickly understood, like where our areas of opportunity were. And we understood that the moment that we tried to do something that was maybe just outside of our skill set, we could probably do that, if we just allocated some more resource. We realized that unless our customers were the ones that were asking for it, that it really didn't make any sense for us to do that. So we really had to get creative and resourceful with what we were doing already, right? And knowing
Gotcha.
that digital marketing is one of those things that while it's constantly evolving, there are certain things that are always the same, right? Like they're just kind of changing medium and format, but at the end of the day, you're just trying to foster connections between consumer and brand.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I've got a couple questions from Ruth here. And again,
Hi, Ruth.
Yeah, she'll hear you, but not respond. One question is, what type of customers ended up doing better after COVID-19?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I would say that I do have right here. So the types of customers that we saw doing really well, especially in our portfolio, if any e-commerce client just saw tremendous growth, and we're talking double digit, and depending on the category of product that you're selling, it was triple digit. And the frustrating part that some of our clients had was the supply chain disruptions that were born out of COVID, and where people were not prepared. They had, you got to love lean manufacturing up until the point that all of a sudden, consumer behavior just completely changes, right? And all of a sudden, you kind of wish that you had more, that you weren't so lean and you weren't so just in time with your manufacturing stack. So e-commerce clients, home services clients, and what I mean by that is so we do a lot in the corporate franchise marketing area. We have a lot of corporate franchise clients. So brands like Mr. Rooter, Mr. Handyman, Glass Doctor. Well, people are spending more time at home, and things that they would normally just largely ignore are all of a sudden things that they're just fixated on because they're spending so much time at home, right? Like you now catch that window at a certain light and realize that it's something that you need to get fixed, or you see one spot and you're like, what's that noise all of a sudden that I hear and I can't get rid of? Oh, it's like you have an HVAC problem, And so we saw those clients doing really, really, really well. And the other types of brands that we saw doing really well were ones that were direct to, B2C clients that dealt with selling outdoor equipment. Mm-hmm. As you can imagine, people wanted to be outside. So the likes of, like try buying a kayak over at MC Sports or Dunham. Good luck, right? like stuff like that, camping equipment, like all of a sudden people are getting ready for the end of the world, right? So
yeah, this is all hitting very close to home. I think it's I've boosted several of your category groups there. So
yeah, it's like I know who you are, right? No, but yeah, it's something that I've certainly seen, and we have unique challenges here in Traverse City, in that if you're in the service industry, staffing is an issue. Pivoting to being a completely different business by doing curbside is an issue. If you're in the tourism industry, that's an issue. But what I have noticed, because we do have some tourism clients, is that we work really closely with brands like Treetops, which is out in Gaylord, and then organizations like the resort, we do work for as well. And at the end of the day, what I would say is you kind of have to ask yourself, and this is a throwback to Thomas Levitt's paper of 1960, Marketing Myopia, right? Like, you really have to ask yourself, like, what kind of a business am I in? Like, what is it that I do, right? And when you're a Treetops resort or a resort of any manner, like, you're in the business of creating experiences. Well, once you understand that you're in the business of creating experiences, you're not so tied to those traditional mechanisms by which you deliver your product, right? You can curate an experience in a different manner outside, right? And so I think that was one thing that I think was very interesting, in that, again, going back to the people that you have that work with you, like, if you can step back and get very creative, given the constraints that you are presented with, you could find yourself inventing a whole new product category that you weren't anticipating to create, that all of a sudden helped you just kind of get by. So
sure,
that's that for me. Required reading. Here it is. This is not Marketing Myopia right here by Harvard Business Review.
We'll do our best to track down a link to that and share it with the members.
Theodore Levitt. What's old is new, right? That seems to happen all over the time. So,
a couple more from Ruth here. What advice would you give to businesses taking into account that things may not be back as they used to be? You can, however you take that, if there's anything takeaways you've gleaned.
Yeah, Ruth, that's a really great question. It's almost like I gave you these questions to throw over my way. So Ruth, what I would say is the importance of creativity, right? And allowing technology to be a partner with you and to help collaborate with you, instead of being this thing that you have to just deal with and try to figure out a way to work around, right? Technology can be an amazing asset for you and your business. It's a force multiplier. It does things for you when you're asleep and while you're awake, right? Answers a lot of questions. So really understanding, your business and understanding at the end of the day, like the consumer behaviors, your customers' needs, whether you're in B2B or B2C, and making sure that you're leveraging technology to do things that you might not be able to do on your own, right? And so, and what that forces you to really do, and people talk a lot about this approach to, you hear the term patient-centered wellness. I think that, the big miss of the last 10 years in marketing is people talk a lot about the word big data. But big data is, you hear the term garbage in, garbage out. Like, it's not something that you can rely on altogether. It's more valuable for you to just have one-on-one conversations with your customers, getting a sense of what their pain points are, and then crafting, infrastructure around them, than for you to try to reverse engineer that with information that is taken out of third-party aggregators. I think people have put in too much stock in big data, and it's proven to be very ineffective. And it's almost the point where people have invested so much resource into it that they're trying to make it work when they're not really going to get the answer that they're looking for. They just have invested too much to say, I have to give up.
Sure.
And just for context, and I think this kind of goes into the next question that Ruth asked, as far as, are you planning to increase staff? The answer is yes. And the staff that we're planning to increase, and it's true for the last 5 hires that I've had, I am more interested in hiring people that have anthropology backgrounds than people that have any kind of marketing backgrounds. Like getting people that understand that at the end of the day, we're communicating with people, and that it's more important for us to connect with people in a really authentic way. And what triggers these people to do what they do? What are their motivating factors? What's their, Maslow's hierarchy of needs? How do you fit in there, right? Like, especially when you do things like day parting exercises, where you realize that people are busy, right? And you're asking a lot of them to pay attention to you when there's 600 different messages that are being sent to them every hour. So you really have to understand where you can meet these people's needs and when you can be available to them and meet them there. And that's how technology can help. So,
excellent. You might see the next question from Virginia, which reads, what do you see as the future of work from home? Will it be a permanent shift? And is it a function of the type of business? So, your best estimate.
That's a good question, Virginia. So what do I see as a future work from home? Here's the thing, like people, we're social creatures, whether you're introverted or not, right? Whether you get social anxiety or not, like people like people, right? And so, and I've noticed this recently, with people that I've hired, where they've been work remote employees for a couple of years, maybe 5 years, and they just really miss being in an office. So that part, unfortunately, has changed, right? Like if you can work remotely, I believe the executive order states you should, not you can, right? Like, and so a majority of my colleagues are working from home, but a large part of that also relies on the ability for my colleagues to find things like childcare and for them to be in school. And so when that's something that's being threatened and challenged, that becomes a little bit more difficult. So the way that I see the modern office looking nowadays is more a function of I guess, operating like a co-working space, where I'm going to have an office, and right now it's largely empty, and people come in and out to use, the resources that I have available here. They come in here because they need focus time for a couple hours. They're going to have all their meetings within this block of time, print everything they need to print, download everything they need to download using my high-speed internet, and then they're going to go back to their home office and continue to work remote. And so, again, right, like creating an environment of flexibility that allows them to come in and out, knowing that nowadays, as people work remote, you can work from anywhere, right, as long as you have an internet connection. So, but obviously that's going to be a lot different if you're in manufacturing, right? If you're in the poultry business, you can't socially distance in certain areas there. So, it's certainly a challenge.
Fernando, sorry to cut you off there. Another kind of nuts and bolts question. Where are most of your employees located? Are they here in the area, or are they, elsewhere?
Yeah, so a lot of my employees are actually located in the area. I do employ a couple of colleagues that are based I have one in Canada, and then a couple in the Midwest, and one two in Ann Arbor. It's the kind of thing that we are actively looking to hire people. Obviously we want to hire local first, that's a given. We're not the kind of agency that likes to offshore capability. So offshoring customer service, offshoring development to a big trend right now that we see in our space is the Philippines. That's not something that we're interested in doing, just because of the type of business that we are and the type of work that we do. So, but I can certainly, see an opportunity for us to hire people in communities that are marginalized economically, right? Where people can't relocate, right? Where you hiring somebody in one of these Rust Belt communities could be a game changer for their family. and that's something that for me is very important because I see our business as not only a company that can help employ, and be a part of a community here in Traverse City, but I see it as a business that can be a force for change across the country, and that's something that for me is very important.
Excellent. I think you may see, I'm going to read another one from Ruth. Do you miss working with big companies such as HBO, Johnny Walker, Smirnoff, Puma, Prudential, etc.?
So we still work with big companies, and you might not know this because we really don't, Midwest, right? We don't like to talk about ourselves that much. But we do work with what we consider to be large companies, some of which large companies that you've never heard of, right? We work with first tier and second tier OEM manufacturers. We work with companies that you're familiar with, like Under Armour, La Crusade, for our foodies out there. It's been a shift. I feel like brands like that are recognizing that there's talent outside of the coast, in the East Coast, West Coast. And one thing that my colleague at Under Armour said to us when she actually went to the Ohio State, I believe is how it's referred to. So shout out to any Buckeye fans that are logged in right now, but go blue. Go blue. And so what I would say is she went to school in the Midwest, and what she said is, I don't want to necessarily hire anyone that is here locally, because there's this element, and this is true because I used to work in New York in advertising. They're really jaded, if I'm being honest. They really are too into themselves, and what Demi, my colleague at Under Armour, said, I know that if I were to hire an agency in the Midwest, and not to say that I'm looking for some lower tier service, I can get my services met and have a better customer experience because they're going to value my business more. And coming from somebody like that at Under Armour, I was just completely blown away. Right?
That's cool. Yeah.
So I thought that was something, and I see that as an ongoing trend. It's something that we're actively doing, from a marketing perspective. That's our message, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is you can find just everything that you can find locally, but better, because we're Midwest nice, even though I'm from Los Angeles. Well,
That's
whatever.
excellent. Yeah, certainly. I think that, I had a question, what were your takeaways? Your prior roles were, created a good foundation or were related, as I see it, to your current, helm there. But, what are the takeaways from the prior?
Yeah, Chris, what I would say is, I think, what I would say is just to kind of sum up a couple of things that I wanted to say, in what I've noticed and from where we find ourselves today. I think that the challenge right now that you're seeing, and I wrote, and for those of you that don't, the shameless plug, for those of you that don't follow us in our blog, I would invite you to. If you don't like the content, you could just unsubscribe. But if you go to oneupweb.com and go to the blog, you can sign up there by putting your email address in there. And what I would say is there's this term, the marketers are kind of following the same playbook right now. They're not very socially aware of their consumer. They're trying to put on a face of, we're back, we're open for business, everything is okay. There's this very popular Medium article that was kind of going viral. It's like, prepare yourself for the ultimate gaslighting event that's ever happened, where it's like there is no doubt about the fact that we have faced a collective trauma. Like, people are not visiting with their family. They're not being able to interact. I mean, again, we're social creatures the way that we normally would, for fear of contracting a virus that can do some really bad things to you. And in that regard, it's something that for some, like, people never ever thought that something like that was going to happen to them, right? And so you can't just gloss over that, right? Like you can't just come in and say we're open for business if we still have 18 million people collecting unemployment. You know, like you have to be very, very aware of what message you're going to be putting out there, because the last thing that you want is for you to just come across as being tone deaf. And so that is something that again, like, be empathetic. That's a good thing. You know, understand your customer and their needs. Very, very important. Because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, the worst thing that can happen is you might learn something that you didn't know. And so, and then the other thing that I would say is as far as something that's very important that I have gleaned from my experience working at different agencies, you know, both in TV, in film, in advertising, is the power of storytelling, right? Like regardless of medium. Podcasting has, as you all know, is something that has had its first blip, you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And even though you could probably argue it goes way back from the origin story of radio, right? But it's something that storytelling is storytelling. Good storytelling is instantly recognized. And right now people are looking for content like that, you know, and the brands that are able to react in that way and provide that storytelling, you know, and package it around who they are as a company and the services that they offer. And I'm talking, like, I don't care if you're a chemical manufacturing company or if you create widgets for whatever, like, there's an opportunity for you to tell a story, if not at the very least your own story, you know, and I think that that's something that often gets overlooked. And it's something that is what I would consider very fundamental to business. So
excellent. So those are great words to wrap this up on. I don't know if that was, it sounds like that may have been your plan, and, you know, great. I'm going to try to see if I can do gallery, see if I pop up here on our stream, but, you know, great conversation, great answers to the questions. Maybe we can squeeze one in here. Could you share an anecdote about working with the programs Lost and Desperate Housewives?
You know, I'll tell you something really honest, Ruth. I worked on promoting those shows every episode. I have never once seen an episode of either show, and because a secret to promo advertising, as we call it, is that you get these clip reels from the directors, these known as dailies, right? And you go in there and it's so formulaic. It's like, here's your soundbite, here's a call to action, here's the branding at the end, and there you go. And I hear they're great shows. I can certainly relate to being lost right now, and the idea of being in purgatory. So that's certainly something anecdotal there, right? And I'm not going to touch Desperate Housewives.
Yeah, that's we'd be remiss if we didn't throw that one at you. So, Fernando, you know, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Congrats on growing the business and the success. And it sounds like the future success to come. And, you know, taking the time today to join us and answer some questions. So,
yeah, I appreciate it. If anyone else has any other questions, you know, you can find me out there on the interwebs, and I'd be happy to make myself available to you.
Excellent. It's awesome. Thanks a lot. Take care. We'll look for you around town. So.
You got it, man. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks to the members who jumped in and followed along today. Our next meeting is October 23rd with Barry Rabe of the University of Michigan on carbon pricing. Thanks again to Fernando Meza, CEO of OneUp Web. Great presentation. Appreciate the time. To everybody, have a wonderful weekend and enjoy the fall colors that are popping out a little bit here. So I will end this for all.
Yeah.
So,
have a great day, everyone.
Yeah.